Well, then you have pleasant good morning, Virgin Islands, and happy Paradise Tuesday to all. And this glorious Tuesday in Paradise, it is December 9th, 2025. And the year is coming to an end in 22 days. 22 days more for the year 2025. And you just heard the message, if you were paying attention, a message by our current delegate to Congress, Stacey Plaskett, in which she tells you her side of this story. And there's always several sides to a story, but facts can be verified. But I would like to know what's your thoughts on the message instead of character assassination. Pay attention to the message for a moment. Put down the pitchfork, regardless of how you feel about any individual. I like to focus on the message itself. As I said, everybody could have and often do their opinions, have strong opinions about things, but opinions are not facts. And everyone should get the facts. Knowledge is power. But of course, you're entitled to your opinion, your views, your perspectives, your beliefs, feelings, thoughts, imaginations, fantasies, and even delusions. You're entitled to those, but you're not entitled to your own facts. So this is a talk show. Once again, welcome to At the Table with Crucian Educator. This is yours truly, Verdell Peterson. I'm the host for this 1 hour radio talk show on WSTX 970 AM. It also streams live on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and also on WSTX Facebook page. It is a talk show, and I would like to hear your thoughts and what you just heard. So the numbers to call in are 340-773-0390 and 340-773-0490. So you heard it. I listened to it twice and try to get as much information as possible. So first question that first of all, I have no guest today. I was anticipating a guest. This is second time, and unfortunately, we just have to roll with the punches. I have to adjust. Sometimes it's just not possible for guests to make it, but I'm here, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts and several topics that I'm going to bring up. First one, of course, is about this Epstein file and the situation that the delegate to Congress has been embroiled with. We know that there was a hearing by the House of Representatives, and there was a motion to have the delegate sanction to have her removed from the Intelligence Committee, and that failed. The effort failed by a narrow margin. Nonetheless, she prevailed in that instance, and I see it as being exonerated. I have my personal views on that, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. So that's the first question. What are your thoughts and the message that was just delivered by Delegate to Congress Stacy Plaskett. Next issue, I am sure there's so many things going on. First of all, let me just say I focus on topics such as governance, the Revised Organic Act of 1954, which is what is presently governing us since we don't have a constitution for the U.S. Virgin Islands yet. I also, of course, focus on constitutional development, political status, self-determination, Virgin Islands history and culture. I avoid topics such as conspiracy theories, religion, political ideologies, mythologies, and sports. Not that sport is bad or any of those things are bad. Just my passion is more on the topics that I mentioned. Civics, education, for example. That's my focus. But as you know, politics is in the mix of everything. Politics, we have elections. That involves politics. That's a wide area of politics, political science. That's all surrounding government, how we govern, because we have what is known as a representative democracy. That means that we elect representatives to three branches. Well, we don't elect here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we don't elect attorney generals or judges, but in many states, they do. Judges are elected and attorney generals. Here, though, we still have the same form of government that exists in each of the 50 states. There's a Republican form of government. That means there are three branches. The first branch is the legislative branch. The second branch is the executive branch. And the third branch is the judiciary branch. We elect senators here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. There are two voting districts, and there are four main Virgin Islands occupied by people who vote, electorate. You have the largest island, St. Croix, at approximately 84 square miles. St. Croix by itself is a voting district. And then the other three islands make up, they call it the St. Thomas, St. John district. However, it includes Water Island, the fourth Virgin Islands. So they attach Water Island to St. Thomas, but Water Island is a separate island, and there are residents on that island, and I'm sure some of them are registered voters, so they're part of the St. Thomas, St. John voting district. Therefore, politics is involved. Maybe you may not be as involved in it as others. However, it's important that we understand how we're governed, because regardless of who's involved, everyone is being governed by the same document, the Revised Organic Act of 1954. That's the government document of the Virgin Islands of the United States. It's our de facto constitution. So politics is in the mix because in order to become a senator, you have to be elected, of course. So you have to be a politician. What is a politician? Someone seeking office, public office is a politician. You have to campaign. You can't just put out a poster, I am so and so, and I'm running for so and so. No, it involves convincing people that you're the best candidate, since each district has choices to make. Each district, you can choose or elect 7 senators. 7 senators, district senators from St. Croix, and 7 district senators from the St. Thomas St. John district. So as long as you meet the eligibility, you can run on the island of St. Croix to be a district senator from St. Croix. Same thing, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, you can run to be a senator from a district senator from the St. Thomas St. John district. And you can come from the island of St. Thomas, St. John, or Water Island. So it's not just from St. Thomas. You can be a senator who has bona fide residency in St. John or Water Island, and you could serve as a senator from the St. Thomas St. John district. Okay? But you have to be a resident of the St. Croix district in order to be eligible to run from the St. Croix district. Well, not necessarily a bona fide resident. I'll get to that. To run for the at-large seat, which both districts elect, the candidate has to be a bona fide resident of St. John, not necessarily residing there, but has a bona fide residency. What's the difference? Well, a bona fide residency is your domicile, your home that you can always go back to. You could live many different places. My domicile, my bona fide residency is here in St. Croix. However, I can move to St. Thomas, reside there for 4 or 5 years, and then I decide I want to run as a senator from the district of St. Thomas, St. John. I can still have my bona fide residency on St. Croix, could always move back. It's not going anyplace. I have the same bona fide residency for more than 25 years now. But that doesn't mean I can't, for a moment, reside someplace else. So I hope that clarifies that. So that's what I meant by we need to be aware of our rights as a voter, and we need to be involved. I strongly encourage everyone who's eligible to register to vote to do so. The requirements to become a registered voter in the U.S. Virgin Islands is you have to be 18 years old at the time of the election. So that means if you're not 18 years old, you can still go to register to vote if by the time the election comes, you'll be 18 years old. Okay? That's a little different now from being, well, okay, you must be 18. You can be a day shy away from 18 years old on the day of election. So that doesn't mean you cannot register now if you will be 18 years old at the time of election. When it's the next election, I believe the next election is the first Tuesday in the month of November. I think that's how it works. Definitely, I'm aware that next general election is 2026. The next gubernatorial election is 2026. November of 2026. So count down. We are now 9 days into December. And as I said, you have 22 days left in this year. So it's not too early to begin thinking of registering to vote if you're eligible, if you have never registered to vote. Okay, as far as the age requirement. Now, obviously, you have to be a citizen of the United States to register to vote here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Why? Because the U.S. Virgin Islands is an unincorporated territory. And the U.S. flag flies here. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The U.S. Virgin Islands is not a state. However, the U.S. Constitution is applicable to us in some aspects. Not the entire document, but definitely the 14th Amendment. We are citizens of the United States. So that's the second requirement. And of course, you have to be a resident of the place that you're registering, of the district that you're registering. As I say, you don't have to be a bona fide resident, but you have to be a resident here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. If you're going to register in the St. Croix district, you have to be a resident of St. Croix for at least 30 days. It was challenged before because it was not consistent with federal laws. In every state, you have to be a resident for at least 30 days of that state to register in that state as a voter. So it's consistent, at least 30 days. So if you're here in the Virgin Islands and you have legally established residency for no less than 30 days, you're 18 years old and you're a citizen of the United States, you can go down and register to vote. Could be here in the St. Croix district, or you can be a resident in the St. Thomas St. John district. This is why politics is in the mix, because elections is an important aspect of government, representative democracy. So I explained we elect 15 senators, 7 districts from each district, and 1 at large for both districts. That's the first branch of government. That's the legislative branch, which is equivalent to Congress. Congress is the first branch of government, but that's the central government. That's the US government. That's the federal government. We have our local government. We have the Virgin Islands government, the US Virgin Islands government. So we have the same farm, 3 branches. The second branch is known as the executive branch. The head of the executive branch is the governor. Both districts elect the governor of the Virgin Islands. To be eligible to have your name on the ballot as a gubernatorial candidate, you have to be at least 35 years old. Again, you have to be a citizen of the United States. And you have to be residing in the territory for, I believe, facts can be verified. So I'm just giving you what I recall. I believe it's 5 years a resident of either district to run for the governor of the Virgin Islands, which is the head of the second branch, the executive branch, second branch of government. For the central government, the head of the executive branch would be the president of the United States. Now, there's a third branch, the judiciary branch. The president appoints Supreme Court justices. The governor of the US Virgin Islands also appoints judges, but not district judges, judges for the Superior Court. For the district courts, the president has to appoint the judges. We don't elect judges here, as in some parts of the states, in some jurisdiction, in some municipalities in the states. Possibly Puerto Rico, I'm not sure. I will look into that. Do they have elected judges in Puerto Rico? I don't know. So for this upcoming general election, you also have an opportunity to elect delegate to Congress. You heard the message from our current delegate to Congress, Stacey Plaskett. Prior to her election, we had Donna Christensen, who served as our delegate to Congress. We also had Randy Lugo, Vincent Fraser, and even the first elected governor served as a delegate to Congress. Our first elected governor, you should know, Melvin H. Evans. I think that's it. Those are all the names I think have served as delegate to Congress. I am presuming the current delegate to Congress may not seek a second term, but I'm presuming it's just pure speculation. As I said, facts can be verified. Fact is, she is currently serving, and any concerns you have pertaining to her role, I think you have the right to contact her office. Any inquiries regarding Epstein file, rather than making assumptions and creating your own facts. Get the accurate information. It's best to get it directly from the representative in question. So any matter pertaining to the office of the delegate to Congress, you can find out how to get in touch and inquire. So if you don't have any thoughts on that matter, I'm going to move on to a second question. Do you have any ideas on how to improve the services of WAPA? I'll let you think about that because, we recently had a blackout and I received numerous notifications on my cell phone via email. The last notification I got here, update 9:25 p.m. major electrical. That was on the same day, Sunday, December 7th, when the entire island suffered a blackout, island of St. Croix. And my notification says WAPA alert notification from the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority, St. Croix. As of 9:50 p.m., electrical services has been restored to our feeders. You should know what feeder you're on. We apologize for the inconvenience, and thank you for your patience as WAPA personnel work diligently to restore power. So there you have it. It was responded. I don't know what the cause is. There's a lot of speculation what caused that major power outage on the island of St. Croix. But according to that message, they diligently work to restore power. I'm aware that improvements are being made at WAPA. There are plans to eventually move at least part of the units out to the South Shore. There have been several solar farms that have been constructed. And I know yet people are experiencing power outages and even water problems. People are not getting water because not everybody has a system. Some people depend on the potable water coming from WAPA. So water supply was low and other issues related to the situation. For example, yesterday, Monday, December the 8th, all public schools in the St. Croix district were shut down or closed because of water situation. I guess I presume the matter has been resolved and School should be in session today, as far as I know. Didn't receive any update otherwise. So my question is, do you have any ideas on how to improve the services of WAPA? Complaining alone is not enough. Getting yourself frustrated, it only raises your blood pressure. There's some things you have to accept that you personally cannot change. Even though you do have a say in this matter, because the Revised Organic Act of 1954 is applicable to all the residents here. So you have a say. This government, the government has to address your concern. So there isn't anything wrong to complain. However, complaining and getting frustrated is not sufficient. Perhaps you have ideas that could help the government to improve services. The elected officials and appointed officials don't know everything. Maybe you have a brilliant idea. I don't know. I'm interested in hearing. Let's be part of this conversation. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we still don't have a constitution. This is the sixth attempt now. Get back to that. It's all related. Everything that's happened to us, it goes back to the government. That's because we live in a representative democracy. Are we part of the government? Well, it's a matter of semantics, I guess. Some people say we are the government. I just told you the three branches of government. I look at it this way. We create the government. We, the people, the electorate, go to the polls, and we are the one that choose who we want as our governors, delegate to Congress as senators. We choose. We don't choose the AG, the Attorney General, for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Most states do elect the Attorney General. Is that something we would like? How could that happen? It cannot happen unless we have our own constitution. You see? So it's important that we understand our role as civic-minded citizens. We can play a part. As I said, the election is in 2026. There will be a race for governor, for senators, for members of the Board of Elections, for members of the Board of Education. Delegate to Congress. You cannot become an inhabitant. The requirements for delegate to Congress include, just like all the others, there's an age requirement, at least 35 years at the time of the election. So if you're 34 years, but you're going to make 35 years at the day of election, that's fine. You could still have your name on the ballot. However, you don't become an inhabitant before your name, after your name goes on the ballot. It doesn't work that way. To get your name on the ballot to run for delegate to Congress, you must be a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years. At least 7 years, okay? So you could be a naturalized citizen. But if it's only 6 years, when the election comes, you'll be ineligible. If you're an inhabitant of a state and you establish the 30 days residency here in the US Virgin Islands, it still does not qualify you as an inhabitant, because being here for 30 years, 30 days, does not automatically make you an inhabitant of the US Virgin Islands. There's more to that, but you have to distinguish between an inhabitant, a bona fide resident, and just a resident of 30 days. There's a distinction with those three categories. So you have to be an inhabitant before your name even gets on the ballot to be eligible as a candidate for delegate to Congress. It doesn't work like some people believe it does. You don't become an inhabitant once elected. That does not make sense. If you're a bona fide resident in a state and you come down here and decide, you know what, I'm going to maintain my bona fide residency in the state, but I'm going to come here to live in the Virgin Islands for a moment. Yes, you're eligible in 30 days to go register to vote. But if you want to become a candidate, it's a lot more to it than just being here for 30 days and being a registered voter. As I said, you have to be an inhabitant. If you're interested in that office, seeking office, please contact the Virgin Islands election system, vivote.gov, for more information. I thank you for listening today, and we could explore these matters further. You can give your input on the WSCX Facebook page or my Facebook page. You're welcome to join the Facebook group that I have and give your comments. Virgin Islands Affairs Forum. Thanks for listening. Live, learn, listen, love, and levitate.